I'm the Globglow Gabgala. I love books, and this basement is a true treasure trove.
Hermaeus Mora, the Daedric Prince of Forbidden Knowledge, the Woodland Man, the Gardener of Men, the Calamari King, Squid Game, Paul the Octopus, Tentacles McGee. He has had many names over his existence, and is known as one of the oldest Daedric princes in the Elder Scrolls. His hand, or his tentacles, have been all over the place, hoovering up the knowledge beyond our comprehension like the Cthulhu reference he is. But what's his deal? What's his history? What does he actually want? Knowledge, sure, but he has done more than just interact with Dragonborns over the years, and some of these interactions paint contradicting images of the Daedric Prince, who is, in my mind, one of the most complicated figures in the Elder Scrolls because he's, ironically, one of the most simple and single-minded. So, today, let's take a closer look at Hermaeus Mora, how he's portrayed in Tamrielic religions, and how this contradicts the Calamari King persona we have in Skyrim's Dragonborn DLC.
I am Hermaeus Mora, the Gardener of Men.
So, before we talk about who Hermaeus Mora is, we need to discuss what he is. Obviously, he is one of the 17 Daedric Princes, and put that 17 with an asterisk which we will cover later, but what exactly is a Daedric Prince? Well, they're the most powerful of the Daedra, each ruling over their own Daedric realm, in Oblivion, and the Daedra are immortal beings, et Arda, the original spirits, who did not contribute to the creation of the world, and thus did not give their power to make it. As a result, this has led to the belief that Daedric princes are more powerful than their Aedra counterparts, who did give a portion of their power to make the world. But the truth is, this depends on the Aedra and Daedric prince you're looking at. For instance, we saw Akatosh give Dagon a beatdown in Oblivion, and Periite, the Daedric Prince of Pestilence, is considered weak among the Daedric princes. We're told this straight up in a Skyrim loading screen, so I think it's safe to say he's not winning a fight against most Aedra. On the other hand, we have Boethia, who defeated, ate, and then subsequently excreted out Trinimac, an Aedra, turning him into Malakath, a Daedric prince. So it definitely varies from character to character, and this description of an Et Arda who didn't give their power to make the world is a bit of a loose one. Still, where does Hermaeus Mora sit on the power chart? What is his relationship with the other Daedric princes? Well, it's tough to say, since Mora is more of a trickster and a hoarder than he is a demon planning world domination, and this is something that makes his worship also very interesting. In many ways, he sort of feels like the perfect D&D warlock patron, who is very much give and take. He'll give you some knowledge, usually in exchange for some unique knowledge that you have. Actually, our interactions with him in Skyrim are a good example, since he gives us the knowledge of the Bend Will Shout to match Miraak in exchange for the secrets of the skull, which he's been coveting for a very, very long time. Knowledge is very much power when Hermaeus Mora is involved, so much so that he has shown he can overcome other Daedric princes, which has proven to be a controversial choice. But don't shoot the messenger. This is all from ESO 2, so it's fairly modern, but it does give us an idea as to how Hermaeus Mora operates around other Daedric princes.
Again, he misses the point.
Focusing on the second act to the exclusion of the final. A common mistake in storycraft.
One of the reasons I said 17 Daedric princes, with an asterisk, is that there are those that the wider people of Tamriel don't know about. Typically, those in the universe say that there are 16 Daedric princes, since they don't know about the Jiggalag and Sheer Gorath situation, but all these scholars might actually be a couple short. You see, Hermaeus Mora's realms are knowledge, fate, and secrets, but fate is not one that he originally started with. In ESO, the Vestige, the fancy name for the player character, finds out about an 18th Daedric Prince, Ithelia, whose realm was paths and fate, and Ithelia was extraordinarily powerful. Hermaeus Mora found out about Ithelia and the loom of the Untravelled Road, a fate-altering machine that she intended to use to, alter fate. But the problem is that the machine could have broken reality. Mora wasn't too happy about this, so he got a squad together, made up of Azura, Boethia, and Methala, and imprisoned Ithelia. You might recognise this trio of Daedric princes that Mora enlisted as the three good Daedra in Dunmer culture, essentially their three main gods. And it seems Hermaeus Mora has at least a good working relationship with these three, particularly Azura, which we'll mention later. Now, to ensure that Ithelia would never present a threat again, Hermaeus Mora created the Echoneer, a tool to erase any lingering memory of Ithelia. But despite the Calamari King's powers and potentially taking over Ithelia's realm of fate, this didn't stop her from being hidden forever. Long story short, and it is a very long story, when the Vestige finally found and freed Ithelia, then went through a bunch of nonsense, Ithelia knew the danger she possessed, and, with the Vestige of Mora's help, entered a new reality in exile. Following this, only Hermaeus Mora and the Vestige knew of Ithelia, potentially one of the most Daedric princes around, and Squid Game here solved the problem predominantly with diplomacy, whether that be with other Daedric princes, the Vestige, or Ithelia herself, who agreed to her exile. From what I can tell, there are quite a few people who didn't like Ithelia from ESO, and I find the entire ordeal quite a confusing one, especially because she began as another type of Et Arda, a Magna Gi, who left the world after finding out that the creation of said world was draining their power, and thus they burst through the sky to create the stars, with Magnus, the greatest of them, creating the sun. And if you recognise the name Magnus, that's because this is his eye. I'm not quite sure how one pivots from Magna Gi to Daedric Prince, and if you want to know more about the world's creation, this Akatosh video is for you, because I go into it there. But let's look at a more mortal perspective with Hermaeus Mora now, and his worship across Tamriel.
You stand in my realm, mortal.
While you can probably find small cults dedicated to Hermaeus Mora across the continent, again we'll get into that later, he features as a proper god in a few religions, although most of the time he comes with a bit of an asterisk. You see, Hermaeus Mora is not really evil. At least, if you were to put him on this chart, he wouldn't really be evil. He doesn't really seem to have morals though, but it also doesn't seem like he wants to go around committing atrocities. He simply wants knowledge and will do whatever is most convenient to get that knowledge. And this has led him to having a place in many pantheons, but with a lot of people basically saying, be careful with that one. The pantheons, or rather general religions, he is found in include the Nordic pantheon as a testing god, the Khajiit pantheon as a worldly spirit, the Bosmeri pantheon as a cult, and the Cyrodiilic pantheon as one of the acceptable blasphemes. Now his placement in the Cyrodiilic pantheon isn't too special, since Tiber Septim essentially reintroduced the Daedric princes as the 16 acceptable blasphemes. Interestingly, this is because the Nibonese tended to occasionally worship Daedric princes during the Interregnum, the chaotic period between the Second and Third Cyrodiilic empires, which is the time period that ESO takes place in the Second Era. So there's not a lot to say here. This allowance of Daedra worship didn't necessarily pay off either, because, well, the Oblivion Crisis happened, and the Empire is still feeling the effects of Dagon shenanigans all this time later. So, you probably should have been a bit more selective about the Daedric Princes you let people worship, eh, Tiber? Now, comparatively, a better example of what they should have done with the Daedric Princes is what the Khajiit ended up doing with the worldly spirits, a sort of sub-pantheon of esoteric gods you don't usually find commonly worshipped in most provinces. According to a book called The Worldly Spirits, there are 3 Daedric Princes that are a part of this group, alongside Nirni, which is the spirit of the planet Nirn, where the Elder Scrolls takes place, and Aoife, the Khajiit name for Ephrae, the hippie tree god that makes the Bosmer eat people. Oh, and if you're new to Elder Scrolls lore, Wood Elves eat people. Anyway, Hermaeus Mora is of course one of the Daedric worldly spirits, called Hermora, and is joined by Hircine and Sanguine, called Sangin. What's interesting is that these 3 Daedric princes are some of the most neutral of the bunch. They don't tend to have specific loyalties, since Hircine just wants to hunt, and Sanguine just wants to get hammered on a Friday night, while Hermaeus Mora just wants every book under the sun. Curiously, the Khajiit see Hermaeus Mora's keeping of knowledge as a duty, and that he keeps a massive library under the sea. There's a little bit of fact in this, but it's not quite right, we'll get into that later too, because Apocrypha is in Oblivion, which I'm pretty sure isn't under a sea, but it's also curious that Paul the Octopus here has a seeming friendship with Azura, according to the Khajiit. Since she's all about the moons and those cat dudes built their entire culture around said moons, Azura is very much a favourite of the Khajiit. So this painted Mora in a pretty good picture, with his vast library often hosting Azura whenever she wishes to do a bit of reading for her BookTok account. The whole Ithelia situation we mentioned before could even be some evidence for this, since Azura and the 2 other good Daedra, as the Dunmer call them, were the people that Mora went to. Still, the Khajiit don't see Tentacles McGee as all sunshine and rainbows. The book itself states, "You should not call on this spirit unless you wish to be tested along the path." So the Khajiit acknowledge the danger of Hermaeus Mora, and while they respect what he does, they don't want to get in the way, but then that leads us to the Bosmer and the Nords. Interestingly, there's some overlap between the 2 here, particularly with the shared title they have for Mora, the Woodland Man.
I have watched your progress through my realm with growing interest.
You might be surprised that, of all people, the Nords and the Bosmer came to the same title for Mora, the Woodland Man, which, considering that the Bosmer are literal wood elves, is probably quite a respectable title for them. Let's look at the Bosmer side first, since there isn't too much going on here. While modern Bosmer tend to go away from the traditional, more isolationist way of life they are famous for, particularly with the Green Pact not harming plant life, this has led to many separate clans throughout the province, and thus many cults opening up. For instance, there's the Wilder King, a god king sort of in the vein of what the Tribunal were, but on a much smaller scale, who resides over the Greenshade, a region in Valenwood. We don't know a lot about the Bosmer worship of Hermaeus Mora, but what we do know is that it's really weird he shares the title of Herma Mora, the Woodland Man, with the ancient Nordic variety. They call him a malicious trickster spirit, but also say that he isn't to be confused with the Daedric Prince Hermaeus Mora. But it's clearly the same guy. I mean, come on, you can't have that name and not be the same guy.
Wayne Tech promised an electric car by this year. I put a deposit down. Where's my goddamn electric car, Bruce?
She can't stand the sight of me. She leaves. Now I see the funny side. Now I'm always smiling.
Then we have the Nordic iteration, or rather the Atmoran version, since this version of Hermaeus Mora is so old that it originated on the continent of Atmora before the Children of the Sky eventually waddled their way south with Ysgramor. Hermaeus Mora, as he is also known, is one of the testing gods, essentially beings that the Atmorans acknowledge as divine but exist to test and antagonize humanity. He is joined by Ork, a strange mix of Malakath and Ark, who is seen as the god of the orcs, at least in the eyes of the Atmorans, and Alduin, who needs no introduction. Hermaeus Mora is probably the least destructive of the three, and is also seen as a trickster deity, although the Atmorans do have quite a black and white view of the world. You're either with the elves, or with humanity, for the most part, which we know doesn't really apply to we have Cthulhu at home here. But the ancient myth we have about him from the Atmorans is pretty funny, as ancient Atmoran myths tend to be. Before we get into that, some context. The ancient Atmorans originally worshipped animal aspects, with each god being represented by an animal. Kine, also known as Kinnereth, was a hawk, while Shor, who you might know as either Lorcan or Shazar, was a fox. So you might then be thinking, rather logically, that Hermaeus Mora would be a squid, or an octopus, or maybe even a cuttlefish. But no, he's a hare. Yeah, this thing. This weird looking rabbit adjacent thing, with a freakishly large ears and the creepiest eyes known to man. Ugh. Anyway, let's tell the story now, and you'll get a kick out of this one. So, we join a young Ysgramor, who would later grow to be the leader of the 500 companions and the dude that the current companions follow the example of to this day. He's also the founder of Skyrim and the number 2 hater of all things elf, right behind Pellinor Whitestrake. In his youth, he was known for doing a spot of hunting in the Frostwoods of Atmora. He loved hunting so much, he got an enchanted bow just for the job, with a magic bowstring that made the weapon sentient, and it, moaned whenever he shot it. Which, why, huh? Why? What's the point? Why is it doing that? Now this obviously didn't make hunting with stealth easy because the bow wouldn't shut up, and when Ysgramor took to hunting the white stag of Forelgrim, which I'm pretty sure has no relation to the Hircine white stag, he found himself getting punked by the thing. The stag was too quick and quiet for the young Ysgramor, which is where the hare comes into the picture. He waddles out of the undergrowth and tells young Ysgramor that he knows where the stag is because of his massive ears, and by sure, those are some big ears. Apparently, Ysgramor didn't find a talking hare strange. Actually, this is Elder Scrolls, that's probably the most normal thing to happen to him. Anyway, this little creature offered the Atmoran big ears too, so he could track the stag more easily. Not afraid to look like a freak, Ysgramor said, sure, I could go for some long ears, but as his ears grew, out stepped the fox, who clotheslined the hare and sent that creepy little bugger packing to oblivion. The fox revealed himself as Shor, telling Ysgramor not to believe the lies of the hare, the Woodland Man, Hermaeus Mora, who tried to trick Ysgramor into having giant elf ears. Now I've seen plenty of elves in Elder Scrolls, and none have ears like that. But that's beside the point. This parable served as a tale to warn Atmorans about Hermaeus Mora, and to use what they have, rather than fall for the tricks of the elves, lest they become just like them, their mortal enemy. As funny as this story is, it does make Hermaeus Mora a kinda ally to the elves, which doesn't really go with the characterization we know about him, since he is known to be extraordinarily neutral. Of course, you can point to his seeming allegiance to Azura and the other good Daedra in Dunmeri culture, But the Admorans didn't really care about that, so I think this is more of just a prank from Hermaeus Mora, which, again, is hilarious. Now, in general, his depictions in Tamrielic religions tend to have a beware of danger sign right next to them. But what about his cults? What about those devoted to the Gardener of Men? Well, that's a different story.
Serve me faithfully, and you will continue to be richly rewarded.
While not quite being pure devotion, sailors often swear by Hermaeus Mora whenever they go on a voyage. It seems that Mora exists as a kind of Davy Jones-esque figure in the Elder Scrolls, tentacles and all. It isn't just the Khajiit that associate the sea with Mora, and it seems that it's a continent-wide superstition, but this superstition is not unfounded. You see, not only does Mora have the Davy Jones role, he also has a sub-realm similar to Davy Jones's locker, called the Fathom's Drift, where many a sunken ship end up. This realm is apparently within Apocrypha somewhere, and is where captains who challenge Hermaeus Mora, whom they know as the Tide King, end up. Sometimes they have forbidden cargo, ignore omens, and I would assume may have some sort of secret knowledge that Mora really wants. Thus, many a sailor is careful of their prayers and words when at sea, lest the Tide King come from the depths to claim their vessel. Some even enter pacts with the Calamari King when they arrive in his realm through the depths, which does sound very, very D&D. It kinda sounds like what happened to Ford in Critical Role Campaign 2, which, Matt Mercer, you're not copying Todd, are you? I mean, both of them have Laura Bailey in the cast, so... Anyway, sailors aren't the only ones offering prayers to the Lovecraft reference over here. He has two specific organisations in his name, one known as the Ciphers of the Eye, while the other is known as the Scribes of Mora. The Ciphers of the Eye, or just Ciphers, are mortal scholars who take up residence in Apocrypha with an invitation from Mora himself. They act as an army of librarians to sort of caretake all the knowledge constantly raining down in Apocrypha. In exchange, they get all of this knowledge to sift through themselves, and a place to live, with a settlement within the Oblivion realm known as the Ciphers Midden, which has often been a place of refuge for mortals roaming the realm. We don't get to see any of this in the Dragonborn DLC, because I assume Miraak is causing a lot of issues for the Ciphers, and we don't see too much of this realm in general. We only really go through the paths opened up by the Black Books. But in ESO, many a Cipher is an NPC you can interact with. While the Ciphers organise the knowledge collected in Apocrypha, the Scribes of Mora are the ones going out of the way to find that knowledge. They go around documenting things around Mundus, and even in Oblivion, using magic to stay hidden and not to interfere with events. They're like the BBC Earth film crew, I guess, and... Wait, does that make Hermaeus Mora David Attenborough? Ugh, we're getting off topic. But all in all, as working for Daedric Princes go, it doesn't really sound like working for Hermaeus Mora is that bad. If you're specifically a scholar, and if running a bookstore is a dream of yours, you even get a proper place to stay, and a bit of a community. As someone with an Elder Scrolls YouTube channel, Hermaeus Mora sounds like my kind of boss. But what if you have, or rather are, something more? Well, that leads us to his characterization in Skyrim, and its Dragonborn DLC.
And so the first Dragonborn meets the last Dragonborn at the summit of Apocrypha.
If you're someone who is somewhat confused by all the ESO stuff and started your journey with the series at Skyrim, you probably know Hermaeus Mora as the tentacled, eye-heavy mass that speaks at a snail's pace. Obviously, he still wants knowledge. That much shouldn't surprise you, and the secrets of the Dwemer are what introduce us to him when we arrive in Septimus's outpost, looking for an Elder Scroll. So if you want to do the main quest, or even Dawnguard, since you need several Elder Scrolls to get that done, you will cross paths with Hermaeus Mora, whether you like it or not. He has at least one of his many eyes on you. Now this then makes his introduction as the Puppet Master of the Dragonborn DLC not so shocking, because it did feel he wanted something more when we originally met him in the main quest. But what is a little strange is his relationship with Miraak. In truth, we don't know what their working relationship was, for lack of a better term, since we don't ever hear them talk with each other except from right at the end when Mora puts his tentacle in Miraak. Well, pause. When Mora turns Miraak into a skeleton and we get his souls. Yeah, that's better. But Miraak is more than just Hermaeus Mora's prisoner. As we know, the pair originally made a pact, in which Miraak got more knowledge, and the Gardener of Men saved the first Dragonborn's life after he got battered silly by Valok the Jailer. If you want to know more about Miraak, I've got a whole video just on him, but since then, Miraak has been unable to leave Apocrypha. In some ways, Miraak sort of exists as Hermaeus Mora's trophy, a massively powerful being with the blood of a dragon and the blessing of Akatosh, reduced to a captive. And as we've established before, Mora's captivity is enough to keep a Daedric Prince behind bars. Still, it wasn't like Miraak was only a prisoner. It seems that he was given a title, the First Servant, something known to the ciphers of Apocrypha, and a title implies responsibility, although we weren't entirely sure what Miraak was actually doing as a job. Sure, we knew he was trying to leave the realm, but did Hermaeus Mora reduce the first Dragonborn to a glorified librarian? Did he live in the ciphers midden, and did he have friends? Was he himself a cipher too? I couldn't find anything beyond dialogue in ESO from a cipher that Miraak had terminated, which called him the First Servant, while Hermaeus Mora said that Miraak's freedom would spread his influence in Tamriel. It's clear with the way that he tends to operate that he would rather keep things low-key, hidden, and he would rather be an observer. So much so that he would rather Miraak be lost to everyone than be free. So then, that raises another question. What does he want with us? Obviously, Hermaeus Mora used us and the Miraak situation to get the secrets of the Scal, but to me anyway, this feels like he's trying to get the best out of a bad situation. I'm not sure what these secrets are, but I'm pretty sure that they are not worth the loss of an asset like Miraak. Unless it's, I don't know, the secret formula to the Krabby Patty. Now that would be worth it, but it's clear Tendrils and Tails over here is seeking to replace Miraak with us. He says as much with this dialogue.
Did you think to escape me, Miraak? You can hide nothing from me here. No matter. I have found a new Dragonborn to serve me.
But what does serving him actually mean? Are we his Cerberus, his security to make sure no one takes his knowledge? Are we his trophy? It's tough because we aren't entirely sure what Miraak was doing under Hermaeus Mora, except for trying to get away from Apocrypha. Mora doesn't trap us, and it seems that the last Dragonborn still gets a choice as to where to go after the Dragonborn DLC, but the fate of Skyrim's protagonist remains unknown because there's no Elder Scrolls 6. We're also an extremely loud individual, and I don't just mean the shouts. We save the world from Alduin and Harkon, get a nationally and maybe even internationally recognised title, Ysmir, and are real high on the Thalmor hit list, which seems like something against Hermaeus Mora's deal. He is all about being low-key, unseen, and is a hoarder of secrets, but it's tricky for the last Dragonborn to be much of a secret, given everything we've done. Well, the answer might lie in how multifaceted Hermaeus Mora actually is.
Whether you acknowledge me or not is your own business, but I will be in your mind.
Some Daedric princes have known true forms. Azura even projected her form onto her people, turning the Chimera into the Dunmer. But Hermaeus Mora is described as being multitudes, and only takes a single form for the sake of mortals, or their minds would explode. It's very much a Lovecraftian concept, and while it is cheap to just say Hermaeus Mora is beyond our mortal comprehension, Hermaeus Mora is beyond our mortal comprehension. It's why he's so many different things at once. He's a scholar, a collector, a trickster, a diplomat, a jailer, and a curse upon the sailors of Nirn. His eyes are watching everything all at once, and his tentacles are ready to reach into every realm to learn more. But what's curious is that, while he tends to keep some secrets to himself, like Ithelia, it's clear he also enjoys sharing knowledge to some degree. That's why the ciphers are a thing, and why Miraak was given knowledge in the first place. In many ways, Hermaeus Mora is a contradiction, because of his multifaceted nature, and he is also almost everything. In my opinion, he's presented as the most omniscient Daedric Prince, and feels like he always has a hand, or rather tentacle, in things, even if his presence isn't as overt as whatever the hell Dagon's doing. Molag Bal invaded Tamriel too, and Mathala had an army of her Aurorans fighting on the side of the Aelids, yet the closest thing we've had to Mora's armies landing in Nirn is what Miraak did, and Octowise made sure to snuff that out before it got out of hand. So really, it's difficult to nail down what exactly Hermaeus Mora is, other than a being that just wants to know everything. That's his entire thing, and that could be what he wants out of the last Dragonborn. We've joined every guild, seen the Eye of Magnus, spoken to Nocturnal, listened to the commands of Sithis through the Night Mother, been to Sovngarde, the Solcairn, and the Forgotten Vale, and so much more. We have seen and known enough to intrigue Mora, and that's without our unique status as a Dragonborn, with an understanding of the Thu'um beyond literally every other mortal. He doesn't necessarily want us, he wants what we know. He wants every bit of information the world has on offer, and thus he is called the Gardener of Men, for he harvests knowledge from the mortals of Nirn when their minds are ripe. He is simultaneously very simple and very complicated. Hermaeus Mora is a contradiction, a paradox, and beyond our comprehension. And that is why he is so damn cool. I do wish he spoke quicker though. I do have other things to do, you know.
I am Asmoth, creator of the Omnitrix, sculptor of worlds, smartest being in 5 galaxies. Of course I can take it from you.
Dragonborn.
Take it from him.
You got it!
Thanks for watching. Hopefully, if this does well, this will be the start of a Daedric Prince series, breaking down the lore, nature, worship, and strange tales behind each of these whack jobs. The Daedric Princes are an odd sort to look at, and I wanted to begin with who I consider to be the strangest of the bunch because of how he's presented. Hermaeus Mora is someone with a clear goal, literally all the knowledge in the world, but an extremely complicated nature. I'm sure I've missed some stuff about Hermaeus Mora, so please educate each other in the comments about the Gardener of Men, and educate me too. When I first started this channel, I thought I'd run out of topics after a year, but it's been more than a year, and there seems to be constantly more to learn from this bizarre universe, despite not having that new mainline game. I was worried I'd have to do Elder Scrolls Castle lore or something, but either way, please do the like, comment and subscribe YouTube ritual, and hopefully I'll see you in another video.